Hey there, I'm Kathleen Jasper, and today I'm going through those situational or scenario-based questions you're going to see on your teacher certification exam. Now, this particular video is going to help you a lot with the FTCE professional education test and other subject area exams. Of course, the Praxis Principles of Learning and Teaching, because they have a lot of heavy scenarios and learning situational questions. And of course, the Texas Pedagogy and Professional Responsibilities test, EC-12. So this will help you really with any certification exam. This tactic is tried and true, and we've helped thousands of prospective teachers pass their exams with it. I'm going to show you it today. Let's get started. So today I'm going to be walking you through a strategy that is tried and true when we are helping people pass their certification exams on the first try. Now, many of you have noticed that you'll see these situational questions or these scenario-based questions on the exam, and that's where you have a big question, like it's like a paragraph talking about the teacher and the students and all these things are happening. And then in the answer choices, you have even more, words and situations and scenarios in the answer choices. So a lot of people have a really hard time with these questions, but they're going to end up being the easiest questions for you on the exam because I'm going to show you how to work backwards and increase your chances of passing this exam just by being strategic and working backwards when you encounter one of these items, all right? So I'm going to do that today in context. You're going to see it in actual test questions so that you understand how to apply this to any teacher certification exam. All right, so I said I'm going to use a bunch of different questions from different testing companies in different states. This particular test question that we're going to use for the next one is from the ETS Praxis Principles of Learning and Teaching. In other parts of the country, you take Praxis, and this comes directly from their study companion, which is for the PLT 5622, which is elementary ed. So let's take a look at this item now. Remember, we're not starting up here. We're going to start right here, all right? And I can see that we have A, plan for, teach, and enforce routines for transition times and classroom housekeeping tasks. All right, I like plan for and teach routines. Now remember, this is 5622, so this is elementary ed. So I'm in the elementary ed frame of mind. So, of course, routines and procedures are going to be really important for me as an elementary school teacher because we're moving students in and out of groups and we're transitioning to math and then English and all of that. So I like A. I'm going to keep A. B, assign homework 3 times a week. Right away, I'm crossing it off. According to our good words, bad words, this is part of the bad words list. Assigning extra homework is usually not the right answer. C, assign individual reading on topics before discussing the topics in class. Typically, individual reading is also the incorrect answer. Not all the time, but when you're talking about an overarching strategy, silent sustained reading or individual reading typically is not the correct answer. Is it good for other situations? Yes, but I'm going to cross it off here unless the question stem or question in and of itself leads me to that. But B and C are coming off my list. And that brings us to D. Introduce new material in a lecture, followed immediately by a questioning session on the material. I don't hate it, but we've got this term lecture, which is typically a bad term right now in education. I love a lecture. I love TED Talks. Some of you like a good lecture, and some students like lectures. They like to sit and listen. It's not a bad thing. But on this test, typically lecture is not going to be at the top of the list. I wouldn't say completely eliminated all the time, but it's definitely not going to be at the top. Right now, this planned for and practiced routines for transition times is on the top of my list. Now let me see if I can find a question stem here. And it looks like this entire question here is one sentence. So I'm going to have to just go ahead and read that whole thing. And we have classroom management. Well, right away, when I see the term classroom management, I know that routines is a big piece of classroom management. You all know who are our elementary ed teachers. You know classroom management, routines, same thing happening every day, very predictable schedule is what students need. It's what we all need, really. So classroom management research findings suggest that one of the most effective ways to maximize the amount of time elementary school students spend on academic activities is for the teacher to do which of the following. Now, this question is a classroom management question, obviously. But remember, classroom management just isn't about controlling your students or making your students be good, right? Classroom management is so that you maximize the amount of time students are learning and you reduce the amount of time you are spending on trying to get your kids together. So remember, like if you do a transition and you're like, hey, Jose, stop that. Julia, no. Sarah, knock it off. Please don't talk. Come on, guys, put your books away. All of that kind of hodgepodgey, like not very organized interaction with students during transitions takes away from the learning experience. So when we're talking about classroom management questions, we definitely want to think about increased academic time and reduced time worrying about, the little things like the talking and the whatever they're doing to be off task. And in order to do that, we need to do A, plan for, teach, and enforce routines continuously for transition times. This is why A is the best answer here. But you can see immediately I eliminated B and C, and D was kind of on my not so high up good words list. As soon as I saw classroom management, I immediately should have gone to A. And if you were reading this item, and let's say classroom management caught your eye, because you know how sometimes you're reading and you don't just go straight to the answer choices, like I'm only looking at the answer choices. Dr. Jasper told me only look at the answer choices. No, of course, you're going to see that first word, classroom management, or first phrase, classroom management, pop up at you. And probably A is going to, as soon as you see that, you're going to see A with the routines. You're going to immediately grab it. But I'm just showing you different ways to kind of work around this problem instead of just starting from the top and going all the way to the bottom. All right, let's try another one. This is another one from the Praxis Principles of Learning and Teaching. So similar to the professional education exam and the Texas EC-12. So again, we've got kind of a situation here, and then we have very long answer choices. So let's go to the answer choices first. A, each teacher employs the classroom management techniques with which he or she feels most comfortable. We have the term classroom management, but then we're only employing it with the ones that the teacher feels most comfortable. I'm not in love with it. I'm not going to cross it off, but I'm not going to star it either. I'm going to leave it. Let's go with B. Teachers collaborate to formulate, select, and monitor classroom management techniques and other classroom procedures based on successful experiences. All right, so this has all the good words in it. We have collaborate. We're going to collaborate with students and with our peer teachers to come up with a classroom management plan. We're also going to monitor classroom management techniques. You know what that's code for? Using formative assessment, observing and collecting that qualitative data to see if what you're doing is working. So that is data kind of embedded in the question. I know you may just be starting to teach, and you may not be savvy enough to say, oh, that's a data question or that's a data answer choice, but it actually is. Monitoring, the word monitoring means that you are actually collecting data and kind of determining if this works. So it is a data-driven decision here in B. And then we have this, based on successful experiences. That's another code for data, because you're kind of collecting that data on successful experiences and using that to make decisions. So B is like a data-driven decision-making answer choice. That's what I see. Now let's go with C. A subset of teachers determines the rules. Okay, the word rules is kind of a bad word in this space, to be given to the other teachers, who then impose, another negative word, impose the rules onto their students. C has got all kinds of bad vibes going. I'm getting rid of C. D, teachers elect a colleague to represent them in working with administration to determine a set of 5 best practices to be used at each teacher's discretion. It's a little too much. I'm not in love with D either. I am so in love with B. Let's read the question, okay? Which of the following professional strategies is most likely to result in improved student motivation and academic performance? All we're talking about here is, how do we improve student performance? Now, obviously, classroom management does improve student academic performance, because if they are more engaged in the learning and spending less time on, behavior issues, they're going to achieve more, for sure. And B's got all the good stuff. Teachers collaborate. That is a professional strategy. Teachers coming together to collaborate, to formulate and select and monitor, using that data, classroom management, and then come together and talk about their successful experiences. This is also a PLC. Now that I've read the the question, I can see that this is actually a PLC, professional learning community. Everybody on the team is coming together, sharing and collaborating about classroom management strategies, and then they are sharing what makes them successful in their classroom. So that is an action research, data-driven PLC answer choice. I'm grabbing it and I'm moving on to the next question. All right, so now I want to show you that it works with all questions. This one is from the Texas Education Agency, the TEA, and this is from their test, Pedagogy and Professional Responsibilities. This is EC-12. So if you are in Texas, you're taking this test. Now, all of the tests I've been talking about today are related. So you can look at the Praxis Principles of Learning and Teaching and the Professional Education and the Texas Pedagogy and Professional Responsibilities, and I'll link them up in the description. But they're all assessing the same stuff, how to be an effective teacher in the classroom. So definitely check them out, check each other's, study companions out. But let me show you how the strategy works on the Texas test. All right, so I've got, a scenario here, and then I have my answer choices. I'm going to start with the answer choices. I can see also there's a question stem here. And I see the word ELLs in there. Let me read the question stem first. Let's go with that first and see how that goes. What is the primary purpose of teaching ELLs? So this is important. It's an important detail. In particular, the skill of learning how to monitor understanding. So ELLs, and I can see it here, stands for English Language Learners. Those are your students who are just learning English. Maybe they're from another country and they are in your classroom, and you have to apply accommodations and scaffolding to help these students. And remember, everything is positive. Everything is an open, loving, learning environment for these students to achieve, and so you can focus on them. Let's go to the answer choices. Decreasing the students' intimidation associated with learning a new language. Decreasing the students' intimidation. Okay, I like decreasing the students' intimidation. It's not my favorite. I am going to keep it just in case. This is about monitoring understanding. So I think this is going to be more about learning and less about intimidation or feeling or self-esteem, but I'll keep A. B, acknowledging the prior cultural experiences of the students. All right, I like that, prior cultural experience of the student. Cultivating a positive environment in which the students can learn. Now we have the term learn here, and we have the term understanding. This one's not as cut and dry as the other two that we did. So we're getting a little bit. I like C. C is my front runner because I have the word learn, I have the word to monitor understanding, and then I have positive environment. So I like C. Let's go with D. Promoting the student's ability to adjust their thinking as needed. Now look how specific D is. Ability to adjust their thinking. If you're monitoring your understanding, then you should be able to adjust your thinking to kind of meet the need of what you're doing. I like C and D. C and D are the best because they have to do with learning. A and B don't. So I'm going to leave them off for now, but let me go ahead and read the question. In a science class that includes English language learners, all right, so it's a science class, so that's going to be about, science instruction, not necessarily reading instruction. A teacher encourages all students to monitor their own level of understanding by having them take notes in their journal as they read assigned text. What is the primary purpose? Again, strong language here. What is the primary purpose of teaching ELLs this particular skill to monitor their understanding? So it goes beyond just a positive learning environment. We're actually taking notes and being more specific on how to adjust our learning. So D is going to be the best answer there. But you can see how C and D are close. But remember, D has got that specific thing that you are trying to do. Right here it says primary purpose. Be on the lookout for words like primary purpose, the most effective strategy, or possibly the first thing teachers should do. That's that kind of strong language in the question stem, that last question of the scenario, that will kind of point you in the right direction. C is good. Cultivating a positive learning environment is good, but D is better because when students monitor their understanding, they can adjust their thinking to help them, become better in the learning experience. So D is best here, all right? Let's do another one from the Texas exam. Okay, so this item is from the Texas Education Agency, and this is from the Pedagogy and Professional Responsibilities, EC-12. So I'm going to show you how this even works with Texas exams. It doesn't matter what exam you're taking. So remember, I like to kind of look over the answer choices here and then go into the STEM. I have A, having students answer questions on paper in class. I don't like this answer choice. On paper seems weird to me. I'm going to cross it off. B, giving students think time after asking probing questions. Well, this has a lot of good words in it. I love think time, often referred to as wait time. And it's a great practice, a very effective practice when you are asking probing questions. It helps students to, kind of mull over the questions in their head and give a good, thoughtful, critical thinking answer. So wait time or think time is a good answer choice. I'm going to grab B. I love B. C, asking students to answer questions online for homework. No, homework. Online for homework is not the right answer on this test. D, assessing students' understanding by using an oral pop quiz. Oral pop quiz is not a good answer here, so we want to take that off. And it looks like B is my best answer, but let's read the question stem and then read the whole question. We have, which of the following strategies is most effective, remember that strong language, most effective for the teacher to use to increase student engagement? Now we're talking about real student engagement, authentic student engagement. Well, increasing think time or wait time after you ask a question definitely increases student engagement. What happens a lot of times is students will, maybe even raise their hand, or you'll call on a student and they'll give a one-word answer, and you'll go to the next student and they'll give a one-word answer. And the problem is they're answering the questions, but it's all recall questions. You're not pulling them towards that critical thinking. And so when we ask really good questions, usually attaching a why or a how or a tell me more about that will help to elicit even more. So if you ask a question like, what is a nucleotide in the DNA molecule? Give me one nucleotide in the DNA molecule. And the student says adenine. Well, you might think that that is complex because it's DNA and it's a nucleotide. You never heard of that. But that's an easily memorized term in biology. So that's really not thinking critically. But if I said to the student, well, how does adenine work in the DNA molecule? Or tell me more about that. Then the student has to go further and dig and kind of think critically. And instead of just waiting for 1 second and watching the student struggle and then letting the student off the hook and going, okay, I'll ask somebody else. And he sits back and goes, oh, good, I don't have to answer. Instead, you wait. And it's super awkward, but you wait. It's very hard. It's harder than you think to implement wait time. I'm the worst at wait time because it's awkward silence. I want to let the person off the hook. But think time, wait time is so important when asking probing questions. So that is definitely going to increase student engagement. Let's read the rest of the question to make sure we know what we're talking about here. So we have, during whole class instruction, a middle school teacher realizes that most of the students are reluctant to participate in class discussions and only give one-word answers when they do participate. So which of the following strategies would help increase that student engagement? Well, giving students more time before they answer. This teacher might even have to say, I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Nobody raise your hand for 10 seconds. I want you to think about this question and really formulate it in your head. And that way your overachievers who always answer the questions, they have to stop for 10 seconds. And it gives your other kids time and a chance to kind of, think about it and offer up their opinion or their understanding of what's going on. Great strategy. Use it in your classroom. And if you see it on this test, definitely use it on this test. All right. And I want to show you how this works on a subject area exam. Now, I saw this test question on the ETS Praxis Middle School Science test. You can see here, ETS Study Companion Middle School Science 5440. So this is going to be for teachers who are teaching integrated science in middle school, and they have to take this certification exam. Now, it's a little bit different than the professional education test, but I'm going to show you how understanding this kind of strategy will help you even when you have a complex science question like this. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the answer choices, and I can see that I'm not real sure here. Each Daphnia, should have its own tank. The length of the experiment is too long. There are too many independent variables here. The sample size is too large. All right, I can't do much with the answer choices. Let me go in the question stem because this is too much for me. This is overwhelming me. Let's go straight here. Which of the following is a major flaw in this experiment? All I have to do is find a flaw. Now, if you're teaching science, you should know what makes a good experiment, right? You have maybe a dependent variable and an independent variable. Everything in the experiment is the same except one thing, right? So let's say we're growing pea plants. We want to see which one grows bigger or taller. And to do that, we need to make sure we're giving them all the same thing except for one thing. So let's say it's fertilizer. Okay, that's the one thing we're going to change. You don't want a whole bunch of other things changing because then you don't know what is increasing the growth in one plant and what's decreasing the growth in another. So you want to keep all of that the same. You want to have a pretty large sample size. You want to do the experiment again and again and again. And you want to follow the scientific method. Now, I'm not going to get into that now. We have science videos to help you with that. But those are things that I know as a science teacher that I'm going to have to be on the lookout for. So which of the following is the major flaw in this experiment? Well, each Daphnia having its own tank is not necessarily a major flaw. I'm going to keep it. I'm not in love with it, but I'm going to not grab it as a flaw. It's fine. If the Daphnia should have its own tank, it doesn't seem like a flaw to me, so I'm not going to choose that. The length of the experiment is too long, as in B. Now, that's not necessarily a flaw. Experiments go on for years and years and years, so I'm going to not choose B. Let's go with C. There are too many independent variables. Well, I know that in a scientific experiment, there can only be one independent variable. Only one. So C looks like it's probably going to be the flaw, but let's take a look at D. The sample size is too large. Oh no. Sample sizes can never be too large. The bigger the sample size, the better. The more data you collect from more people, the better your data is. Let's say we do the same experiment with pea plants and I have thousands of pea plants, thousands. And I all see that the majority of them, 80%, are doing this one thing when I add this one kind of fertilizer. Can I be sure that that fertilizer might be working if there's 1,000 plants and 80% of them are growing better with this one fertilizer than the other plants? I could probably say, yeah. So the bigger the sample size, the better. So D is definitely not a flaw. A, B, and D are not flaws. C looks like a flaw. Too many independent variables is a flaw in the scientific method. So let's read the scenario here. A student performed an experiment to determine the effect of temperature and light on the feeding behavior of Daphnia magna. So this might be a plant. It's temperature and light. So it's probably going to be, or maybe it's a culture or something like that. The student placed 25 Daphnia in each of 2 identical glass bowls. Well, we have identical glass bowls. That's good. That means that you're keeping the control. You're keeping things constant, okay? And then place one bowl in a sunny, warm window and the other in a cooler, dark closet. The student measured the amount of food consumed in 1 week. Which of the following is the major flaw? Well, we have sunny, warm by the window, and then we have cooler, dark in the closet. So not only do we have the temperature, sunny or cooler, sunny and warm, dark and sunny, these are all variables. Warm and cooler are a variable, sunny and dark is a variable, and closet and window are variables. All 3 of these different pairs could have an impact on this experiment. So C is definitely the answer here, that there are too many independent variables. Now notice, if I started up here and read that whole experiment and then got to the question step and then got to the answer choices, I would be like, okay, their own tank. Do they have their own tank? I'd be in there looking around. No, all I needed to do was read that question stem. I'm looking for a flaw. I know that sample size being too large is not a flaw. Daphnia having their own tank is not necessarily a flaw. And the length of the experiment being too long, not a flaw, because you got to take your time in experiments. The only flaw is having too many independent variables. And too many independent variables is a problem, is a flaw in an experiment. So C is going to be the answer choice there, and I didn't get bogged down. So I wanted to show you how it also works with subject area exams, especially when you understand the content and things like that. So use this approach in all exams, especially when you have a long scenario or a complex problem and then long answer choices. This is going to be your friend. So I hope that clears things up for you and helps you when you take your exam. Remember, those scenario questions are your friends because they're easy to navigate once you use this backwards design strategy and our good words, bad words strategy. I'm telling you, we've helped thousands of people pass their exams using these tried and true strategies, and we want to help you too. So definitely subscribe to this YouTube channel. Tell your friends that we're here. We're constantly filming every day, and let us know what you need, and we'll be here for you. Thank you so much, and have a great day.